Hi, I'm Mari Frank, and I've been an attorney mediator for 31 years. Been dealing with conflict for a long, long time. I'm a professor of negotiations, mediation, conflict management, and I'm so thrilled today because one of the people that I think has been very influential in my practice is Mark Robert Waldman, and he is a neuroscience researcher and an author of 14 books. And I want to share two of the books that really have a great impact on me that I really love that he wrote. One is called Words Can Change Your Brain. And he talks a lot in this book about conversation strategies to build trust, resolve conflict, and increase intimacy. Wonderful, wonderful book. And the other one that really speaks to conflict resolution is Neuro Wisdom, the New Brain Science of Money, Happiness, and Success. And we're going to be talking about the strategies that he talks about in these books. And I'm thrilled to be with Mark. So, Mark, thank you for joining me again. It's wonderful to always be with you.
I am so happy and pleased to be here, and I love to always meet a fellow faculty member. I'm also executive MBA faculty at Loyola Marymount University. So all these radical strategies that we're going to talk about today, this is what we teach to our busy executives on how to eliminate both internal conflicts called stress and external conflicts called how do I get everybody on my team and my company to be on the same page and be optimistic and generate far more creativity with far less stress.
Perfect. And, let's talk a little bit about stress to begin with. We've talked last time about conflict in relationships, and we'll do that again. But I think it's really important that we talk a little bit about stress and how that causes conflict in our brain. Can you speak to that?
Well, it's interesting because there is good stress and there is bad stress, obviously. If you had no stress whatsoever, you will open up your eyes, you'd look around the room. Stress would be anything that's causing you a discomfort. So if you don't need to go to the bathroom, if you're not hungry, if there's nothing you're looking forward to in the world, you'll do what any dog and cat does after it's had a little bit of food and somebody's petted on the top of the head. It goes, takes a nap. Okay. So, having a stress-free world, to me, would be probably the most boring thing in the world because it ignores one of the other fundamental principles of the human brain, which is the moment that your eyes open up, this turns on the motivation center in one of the most ancient parts of your brain. And so eyes are open for one sole purpose, to begin to look around the environment and to seek out anything that's new, different, and interesting, because those are things that could be potentially rewarding. It doesn't matter if it's money or friendships or more knowledge, more books, whatever else. We're all, in a certain sense, we have these huge frontal lobes and they're hoarders. We can't get enough of everything and we want absolutely everything. So we hoard it, we collect it. The brain likes everything that's new and different. Put a rat in a maze with unusual objects, it will collect it all and hoard it off into a corner because maybe, just maybe, it will be useful in the future.
Right. But how about the negative stress, the stress that, you're in the middle of a lawsuit or you're in the middle of a conflict with your loved one and it just feels horrible? What about that kind of stress?
Well, that's the first thing that comes up is that, okay, I wake up and I have all these desires and all of these interests that I want to go after. And so I immediately jump out of bed and go running out the door. And I forgot to put my clothes on. Oh no, I didn't prepare properly for the day. So you have to go back in and do that. Okay, I'm a bit hungry, but I've run out of time. I need to get to work. I go down. So I just cook something too fast on the stove and it tastes crappy and whatever else. So I'm building up a whole bunch of stress because I so badly want to get to do this. And I can't because there are all these external obstacles going on. And anyone who's had a child knows this one. Every child wants to stand up. You can't stop a child from going from crawling to standing. But of course, it'll stand up and then fall down. It'll cry, oh no, I have failed in the entire world. And it keeps stressing itself out to achieve those particular things. But the older we get, if we have too much stress going on, we end up burning out, literally, you can actually watch neurons pop if you have a little video camera turned on to them when they're under too much stress.
Right.
But we don't know what stress is because stress isn't something that we think about,
Mhm.
and it isn't something we can really feel, particularly neurological stress. And the biggest form of neurological stress has to do with the fact that for every desire and hope and goal that we also have a bunch of negative thoughts and feelings to go along with it. And those are all the things that were built up over history. Oh, don't do this. Oh, maybe I'll fail, whatever else. Our brain seems to save all of our negative thoughts and feelings. So every time we go out and want to desire something, we feel a little stress called anxiety. I
Right.
want to do this, but maybe I can't. And
Right.
then we get caught up in this interesting form of mental stress that that no other animal really has,
Hmm.
just humans.
And when we're in conflict, it exacerbates, right? I mean, what's going on? I mean, when we're in conflict, we got that fight or flight going on in our limbic system, right?
Well, for most animals, they're not in conflict unless there's a real serious obstacle that stands between them and the object of desire. But because we have these huge frontal lobes, these are the imagination centers of our brain.
Hmm.
And so we're capable of imagining doing all kinds of incredible things. Again, that our young infant probably even thinks, well, maybe I'm going to try flying. And I know I certainly tried that by jumping off of the roof of my house. I certainly would never do that now. Now I have way too many memories of little aches and pains and things. And so all those negative thoughts are stifling my desire to do all this fun stuff that may simply be too dangerous. Animals don't seem to have that particular problem. They know what they desire. They desire simple, survival oriented things.
Right.
And when there are obstacles that stand in their way, they are real obstacles in the outside world, and they try to figure out a way of getting around that. Like I have a dog, and his goal in life, I like to call him Houdini, because she is an escape artist. I mean, she plots all kinds of ways if I open up the door to figure out where to stand exactly so I can't see that she's about to run out the door, and zoom, there she goes. And she'll continually search the whole perimeter of the fence looking for a way out. Her goal and desire is to be free, okay?
Right. Right.
Doesn't accept these limitations called a fence, or this mean, nasty person who just won't let her go running out into the front yard where there's no fences. We, however, can build enormous capacities for all kinds of negative thoughts and feelings and fears and worries and doubts, even though 90% of those worries, fears, and doubts are nothing more than a memory. This is what's weird about the human brain. The fantasy sections up here in our frontal lobes, the positive and negative voices, the optimists and the pessimists, those neurons send connections to those parts of the brain that respond to outside threats. So
Right.
the brain doesn't seem to know that we can dream up these wild fantasies. We have that, I mean, because of this ability, this is what allows us to really be terrified when we go in to watch a horror movie or a thriller.
Right. We don't know the difference if it's real or not.
Right. We jump because our visual cortex sees this awful thing on screen, and there's a part of your brain that doesn't understand that that's a fantasy being created on a piece of film that we're sitting in the theater watching, and we've lost ourselves totally in that particular fantasy. So we do have to learn some technique, some strategy. How can we sit back and discern whether our positive and negative thoughts are realistic? Are our positive thoughts achievable? Are our negative thoughts valid? And there's only one process that we've discovered in our brain scan studies that allow you to do that. You have to learn a strategy of where you sit there and just watch how your frontal lobes are constantly creating all this positive and negative chatter. And that's what we call mindfulness,
Right.
moment to moment awareness of any thought or feeling or memory or sensation that's popping up in the present moment.
Right.
Now, mindfulness practices used to be you have to go through an 8-week mindfulness based stress reduction program and spend anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes every day doing some form of relaxation exercise, some form of watching your breathing, for example, or slow movement and yoga stretching, or a body scan where you go through from the top to the bottom, all the places that you may have any physical tension. But
Right.
that takes 20 to 40 minutes to do. And
Right.
our executive MBA students won't give us more than 60 seconds. When they get out of bed, they're ready and raring to go because they want to make $1 million a year. And they're going to use every second to do something that will generate money. What
Right.
in the world does mindfulness or meditation or
Right.
spirituality have to do with making money?
Right. So that's when you give them the yawn, right? That's one of the.
Well, we use yawning because it's simply the fastest way to eliminate mental stress. But now you have to define what, I mean, nobody's really defined what relaxation is.
Right.
So you are relaxing from what? Some form of tension. Well, we can certainly relate to that on a body level. How do we physically relax our body? Well, we have to become aware of what physical tension is. So we
Right.
can do all kinds of very simple strategies with that, like just lift your shoulders up and hold them. If we all held our shoulders up right now, everyone who's
Right.
watching or listening to this
Right.
program, uh, you'll feel tension beginning to build and build and build.
Right.
Now, instead of just dropping your shoulders the way most people will do,
Yeah.
if you lower them in super slow motion, you'll notice that you feel a whole lot more sensations in your shoulders and arms and neck than you felt than if you just move normally. This is what I'm calling mindful movement. It has to be super slow, and that allows your brain to become aware and allows your consciousness as well to become aware of the little tiny tensions that are in your body.
Mhm.
And with that awareness, your brain will automatically send out a relaxation signal because tight muscles won't necessarily help you to move in the most effective, efficient way possible. So, this is why mindfulness is becoming so much a strategy to teach to athletes and high performance individuals. If you just take a moment to become mindfully aware of your tension, if you take a moment to do some yawning. And again, we do the yawning just to get rid of mental stress. Mental stress is being defined as too much metabolic, neurological activity going on,
Mm.
specifically in those frontal lobes that's generating all those positive, negative, and positive and negative thoughts and feelings.
Right. I would think that's why yoga is so good too, because you have to do those movements so slowly. So,
It's good, but it's not great. So,
so
what we so yes, there are hundreds of studies showing that yoga actually is a fabulous mind-body form of meditation and medicine. But people do yoga, they usually try to push themselves into a position.
yeah.
So mindful yoga would be totally different. It would be like saying, okay, one very famous yoga stretch is that you stretch your hands up above your head and
Hmm.
you keep raising them and raising them. But
Right.
what if we spent the entire half hour before you even raise your hands, slow raising your hands in such slow motion that you become aware of what it feels like to even raise your hands. So, like now, my hands aren't even, I've been doing this as we've been talking, and they're only level with me. I'm feeling a lot of ache and pain in
Mm.
different arms. So, I'm
Right.
now aware of those aches and pains as I slowly begin to raise my hands up above my head
And breathe into it, and it seems to feel.
or yawn into it as well.
Oh, that's good
In
too.
other words, we're taking any yoga stretch that you've done, but we're slowing it down, super slow movement, so that you become more aware of that yoga stretch, and you'll get so much more from your yoga practice. And you can do the same thing if you're playing tennis or golf in super slow motion. Imagine first in your mind doing the perfect golf swing or the perfect tennis swing,
Mm.
and then actually do it with your hand. Carry out that swing. And research study after research study will show that if you use your imagination to envision the perfect activity, whatever that activity is, it could be work activity, you will perform that activity with greater efficiency, with less physical stress, more mental clarity, and you'll do better at that game. And that's why many forms of mindful movement is now being taught to Olympic athletes.
I've heard you say this before, and I've read in your books about your intention and visualizing ahead of time. And I can see how really helpful that is. And I remembered back when I was in college, I dated an Olympic diver, and he would be doing these incredible dives, where he'd bring like 4 off the 10-meter board. And I go, how do you do that? He goes, I see it in my mind's eye, exactly what I'm doing, and I feel it in my body before I ever try it for the first time. So, I mean, I remembered that. And then when I heard you say that, I remembered that also. So before I walk into any tense meeting, I just visualize what I'm going to do and how well it's going to come out, and all the smiles on the faces. And I walk in with a very much more comfortable, relaxed perspective, because I envision how it's going to be positive. And that's because of you.
Now, remember that envisioning something is not using your visual cortex. So our visual cortex is always forming maps and creating images and contrasts of what the outside world may look like. We never know that. Our frontal lobes are creating a totally different map. That's where our envisioning, our visual processes take place. Some people don't actually visualize. They think their way through things. So instead of visualizing walking into a meeting, do something experiential, like close your eyes and just imagine in any way that you want having a perfect conversation. Imagine yourself remaining very calm and serene, assuming that you will always maintain positivity and be looking for solutions that would be useful for both you and the other individual. You hang on to that thought, and that thought helps to interrupt all of the other distracting thoughts that might sabotage that meeting.
And that's another form of mindfulness. You're being the observer of yourself, right? You're observing yourself before you go in, and then you can also observe yourself while you're there.
Well, there's 2 different forms of mindfulness. One is intentionality, focusing on, concentrating. Right. So, for example, I can have you close your eyes and listen to the sound of this bell. And as the sound fades away, I'm going to ask you to listen more deeply and deeply. This is our very first exercise that we use with all of our executive MBA students. And we use it with people who are struggling with ADD-like symptoms and mind-wandering problems and who get distracted. This is a way of teaching you how to focus. Listen to the sound of the bell, close your eyes, maybe do a mindful yawn or a super slow stretch to just prepare yourself. As I ring that bell, listen as deeply as you can, and as it fades away, you have to listen harder. And when you're no longer hearing that bell, keep listening, and you'll become aware of all kinds of sounds in the room or the sounds of your own breathing. Try it right now. Close your eyes. Listen deeply. Listen even harder. Become aware of the sound of your own breathing. You may hear sounds in your inner ear, or sounds in the room, or off in the distance that you never paid attention to before. Now, keep listening as you open your eyes and just gaze around the room as if you've never seen that room before. Notice the different objects on your desk. Immerse yourself in the colors of one of the pictures on the wall. The more you concentrate on that, the more you'll notice that as you concentrate, you don't have any negative thoughts or feelings going on. Your full attention is being given to that object. And that's what one part of mindful breathing was about. In other words, just sit there and turn your attention to your breathing. Just become aware of how you breathe.
Right.
Now, I hated this exercise because I can't think of anything more boring than watching your breathing. But it does teach you how to concentrate. So I have more fun with the bell, and we can we now have a tool. It doesn't matter what you focus on. It doesn't have to be your breathing. It can be an object. You can pick up a rock and keep turning it in your hands, or you may hold a pen and notice all the different colors and the shapes and immerse yourself in that, discovering that pen as if it's a brand new object you've never seen before.
I know I've taught mindfulness classes where I give people a piece of chocolate, like a chocolate kiss, or an almond. If they can't have chocolate, they can take an almond, and they have to really first look at it for a really long period of time and
Yes.
then put it in their mouth. They can't chew it. They can't do anything. They have to like put it on their tongue, feel it on their tongue. And it's amazing how you don't even recognize, for example, with an almond, all the ridges on the almond until you put it on your tongue. So it's pretty fascinating.
Because most of the time we're eating our memories.
Right.
Oh, there's an almond. Oh, I pull up a memory of a wonderful tasting almond. I pop the almond into my mouth and I go back to talking to somebody else, and I'm not even aware that I'm chewing or anything else. And we end up choking on our food half the time.
Right.
So here's an exercise I want to give everyone. For your very next meal, take one morsel of food from your plate, hold it up to the light, look at it, study it, smell it, hold it under your nose for 15 seconds.
Mm.
You're savoring it, you're going deeply in it, you're concentrating on all the different qualities of that one morsel. Hold it on your tongue for 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Why? Because it takes your brain about 20 seconds to discern all the different uh, flavors that tells the brain what nutrients are in it. That's mindful eating. The more you learn how to do that, you'll end up tasting food totally differently. Half the things you think you like, you'll discover you don't like. You'll enjoy those foods that you do like more by eating less.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about change. Change is a constant, right? I mean, that's one thing we know, that life is changing. I'm getting wrinkles, I'm getting older, I move, I have different friends, whatever it is, new classes, new opportunities, new learning. What about change? How does that, how does that react? Or how do we act in change with our brain and conflict and all that? Because a lot of times in the workplace, when you have change, there is tremendous conflict. Talk about.
Well, let me approach it just through the lens of neuroscience.
Right.
Maybe about half of the neurons in your brain, they don't change at all.
Mm.
They're there, they do the same function, they pass on the same amount of information whenever they're stimulated. There's a whole other process that happens. Remember how I described concentrating on the sound of the bell?
Right.
So that's one state of consciousness. That's called focused attention. But it turns out you're using very small areas in your frontal lobes, and those areas for maintaining attention get tired very fast, maybe in 5, 10, 15 minutes. Then the brain, when it gets tired, it goes into what's called default mode. It goes into a mind-wandering, daydreaming-like state.
Right.
During this process, the attention parts of your brain that you use to focus on a specific task are being rested. Your glial cells are actually recirculating the neurochemicals back to those neurons so that you can focus for another 5, 10, or 15 minutes. But what's happening in that state when your mind is wandering all over the place?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out this is your brain solving problems in its own way. So your frontal lobes are solving problems in one way based upon language and memory and the stuff if you learn. The rest of your brain is processing problem solving in a more instinctual way, a wordless kind of way. Again, we find that mindfulness can be used to tap into that. And again, we can do brain scans of what it's like to mindfully watch the mind wandering processes of your brain. So this is how you do that. If you just close your eyes for a moment and just focus, I'll give you if you get my NeuroWisdom 101 program or the NeuroWisdom book, it'll guide you through these exercises very, very specifically.
Great exercises in the book. Yeah.
But see if you can take a moment right now and just allow yourself to have any thought that pops into your mind.
Okay.
And go ahead, Mary, share with me the very first thought that pops in your mind as you watch.
The very first thought was, I hope we have enough time left to go through this exercise. Oh, There it is.
Okay. And then there it is. And I'm going, oh, this is boring. Oh, we have that. Oh, now I don't have to do that exercise. If you do this thing,
Yeah,
very few people can go more than 10 or 15 seconds without having a thought intrude. So the thing that was
exactly.
annoying to me about early mindfulness practice, they just want you to concentrate. This is the other side. This is called open monitoring, where you just allow yourself to become aware of all the jumbly thoughts and feelings and memories that are constantly floating through your awareness. This is the creative process of your brain. Train yourself in these two mindfulness strategies, just focusing on a particular object,
Yep.
focusing on all of the different noise and daydreaming activities that go on. Combine those two, and you'll actually transform. You'll see that there is this one half of your brain that's constantly changing, but you can't even nail it down. So the cool thing about that is that you can watch a negative thought. There's no reason to worry about it, because you'll see that it'll dissipate in 5 seconds and another worrisome, meddlesome thought will pop into your head.
Well, I don't want to worry about going overtime, but I love always our time together. It's always so wonderful. Well, thank you, Mark. Robert Waldman, and these are the books that we've been talking about: neurowisdom and words can change your brain, right here. And there's just obviously so much wisdom that we can learn, and so many wonderful exercises and great opportunities to resolve conflict and be mindful and transform the world, right? That's what we're going to do.
And don't forget to mindfully move in slow motion. You'll discover your body for the very first time in your life.
Okay, we'll have you back again, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you.